My name is DJ Stang, and I in the late '90s or mid '90s, I studied piano at Florida State, and then went on to sign a record deal with Warner Brothers and toured the world for a bit, which pertains to this in one way. When I left the music business, I had already learned nonlinear editing, and nonlinear editing is nonlinear editing, and I decided to change careers completely and fell in love with the idea of 3D animation. So I went back to Florida State, snagged a degree from there, and about 7 years ago, I went to work for the Washington Capitals. And a year and a half, I switched over to the Baltimore Orioles. And the actual project that we're going to discuss is... So before I actually play it, if there's one or two people in the world that don't know what Game of Thrones is, it's a TV show where they have the most amazing open from a motion graphics standpoint. It was rock, paper, scissors / Elastica did it, so shout out to them. Last year, the Baltimore Orioles announced we were going to have a Game of Thrones day in the park for one of the baseball games, and our PR department mentioned it to me, and I said, I love that show. I have an idea. Could we run with this? And they were kind enough to allow me to make this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we are going to dive into this, but before I do, I want to give you guys a quick heads up because we are talking about Cinema 4D in particular. In the sports production world, as in any television type arena for production, we have a million things to do, and everyone wants it really high quality, and we have about an hour to do it. Every once in a while, so that's the title of my presentation, which is Sports Production, High Volume, High Quality, Zero Time. The irony of what I actually decided to show is this was one of those rare moments where I was given 4 days to work on something. And Cinema 4D enabled me to actually crank all of that out in 4 days. So I'm going to start with what our shots are. So when I came at this, first I had to watch the original over and over, and I tried to figure out what parts of it I could replicate efficiently and in a good way. So how many shots there were? I think in the original there's a total of like 13. I didn't necessarily have time to do all 13, so I picked a series of just specific elements to focus on, and then as I got my elements together, which we'll go through one at a time, I had to figure out what the shot did, right? So if what's a good way to say it? Okay, so if we're flying into Baltimore, what are we seeing when we come into Baltimore? And finally, what are the significant elements of the piece? And that, hide you, brings me to this. So, as an artist, I am scattered, and we as artists are all over the place mentally. So, I try to combat that by going hyper organized. So I actually built this in the order of the shots that I wanted. So this first shot is the title bar, and fortunately, I was lucky enough to actually find a rough cut of the original image where I brought it into Illustrator. And then used my favorite plugin of all time, CV-ArtSmart. So this is what we're going to actually build right now. Jumping into technical plugins, CV-ArtSmart. So with CV-ArtSmart, let's shut you down. With CV-ArtSmart, where is my me? There I am. Presentation 1A. So you bring an Illustrator file in, and instantly I've got. Am I upside down? Oh, there we go. No, I'm backwards. Oh, my orbit's reversed. Okay. So I'm going to go to my preferences and change my orbit because I prefer it to be standard setup. And I can't remember where that is. Thank you. Edit preferences and navigation, reverse orbit off. So now I can actually work like I'm used to. So right away we have this, and if you notice the polygons are kind of wonky. It's because they're not spread out yet. But when you make this editable, it's automatically going to shift everything into layers for you. And I'm going to do that and then come back to what this was like. So I'm going to copy that, paste it there, so I can come back and show something else. But when you press C to make it editable, right here you've got all the layers from Illustrator ready to go. And always name your layers appropriately in Illustrator. So now that that's out, we've got the bar here. And bless you. Bless you. So now I wanted to get to this. Command R to render. So how do we go from that to this? I'm going to go back to this one, shut off the new one, open the old one. Where are you, buddy? Oh, I left you off. Now we should see you. Okay. So now that we're there, if you come to, just like in any of the extrusion tools, you have choices for caps here as well to change them to, like, for instance, a fillet cap. So I didn't want a fillet cap on everything. So what I'll do a lot of times is take that, copy, dupe it, and one of them I'm only going to focus on what the background is, so we round out all the edges nicely. So, and this is, I'm actually going through mistakes that I had made when I was doing this, and so I came here and I was like, uh-oh, this is gonna get kind of crazy to even figure out what's where. Plus the polygons are just going through the roof. So the beauty in ArtSmart is we're going to get rid of that one and turn this one on. We're just going to go ahead back to the editable one. So I can either come over here and make it editable or press C. And when you make it editable, it still keeps all of your paths that are extruded with the actual extrusion tools. So now you have all kinds of ways that you can manipulate each object. I happen to be aware that we're just focused on the background, so I'm going to close all these others, right-click, fold all, just because it's faster to see. Open it back up, and we're going to our solid background, which is just one path. So now I want the wood to come out on the outside of this right here, all around the edge, so that way it's clearly defined from the metal on the inside. So with the path, go to our caps, go to fillet, and bam. The polygons aren't going psycho. Crank that up a bit. And I was wrong. There they go. I think it's just overlapping that. So what I'm going to do is move this out of my way. Okay, so it's just one side of it, so I'm going to do the other side. Fillet cap. There we go. And we're back in business. So with that done, and these are all going to end up being the same. I'm not going to get too much into texturing here. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the textures that I use for the actual layout of the landscape for Baltimore. But from this, I knew that I needed the rings, and I went back to the original and watched it feverishly. Oh, here we go. I'm just going to press V, and that allows us to go to projects, And I'm going to go to, I believe it's 1C. Yep. Okay, so this is where the rings fly around a bit. Oh, and in the original Game of Thrones, on the title bar here, it says Game of Thrones, for the two people that don't know that show. And for us, clearly I dropped the Orioles logo in. So these tubes are going kind of all over the place, very steampunk, on fire is kind of how I saw the whole thing. So when I wanted to actually make the rings and then animate them, there's as many millions of ways that there were to do it. I just went with tubes. And what I'm going to do is shut the originals off, highlight all of them, just uncheck those. I'm going to come up to here and select a tube. So also with my camera on, and because I have keyframes set, if I move, the camera's going to snap right back. So I want to get out of that camera. So now I can orbit and check out where I am without getting stuck going back to where it was. So with tube 1, blow it up that way. Oh, that was the wrong axis. Whoa. Let's go out on that axis. All right, so there we go. And you can drag the handles here to increase the interior size. And because it was that steampunk-y kind of look, I didn't want to completely smooth the edges via a Phong tag, or even cranking up segments and geometry. So I kind of left it as is. Let's shut you guys off. Copy, paste. Copy, paste, copy, paste. And I just came in here and one at a time, came down to our coordinates, set a keyframe at the beginning by clicking here, or I don't always use the keyframe all unless I'm in a hurry. And I work in sports, so I'm always in a hurry. So that's kind of my go-to keyframe. Come out to where I would want it to end, which I think was somewhere around 160. Give us, and this is all random and artistic-y. So let's go back to, I'm going to go back and set keyframes for all these guys at once. Shift, highlight them all, set a keyframe, come out to 180, and then select one of these at a time and change the rotation on just random axes, because again, this is a fun make-believe world. Set a keyframe. Did it take? Yeah. Excuse me. So one of the challenges I faced once, because I did all this randomly, one of the challenges I faced was navigating the camera through these things, because let's go back to the actual camera. I'm going to shut these guys off. Not the flare, but those guys. Bye-bye. Turn the originals back on. So you never want your camera to go into polygons, because then you get that business, right? And this is not a full screen wipe. This is supposed to be a smooth animation. So when I was setting my camera up with this, I thought about using a target object, but the problem is I knew the next shot we were going to be aiming down to go into the city. I'm going to go to my favorite shot and talk about that for a second, because every once in a while you got to do things that are for you, because this is supposed to be fun no matter what. No matter what, like, deadline you're on and stress you're under, like we get to play video games for a living, essentially, doing this. I always tell my son Jaden, I'm like, what you're doing in Fortnite is you're building objects and then you're animating a character, and that's kind of what we do here as 3D artists. So I'm going to go to my favorite, which is this. So this is the USS Constellation, which is a very iconic Baltimore ship. I don't know enough history about it, so I'm not going to go into anything, but I am going to talk about the artistic process of how I came up with this particular shot. Okay, so and a quick grayscale gorilla, guys. Um, I challenged Nick to see how many of their stuff I used in here, and he got all of it absolutely correct quickly. So thank you. So in these buildings that come up, to save me time, I didn't have time to model all of Baltimore, so I had to do it quick. So I went to the grayscale gorilla city kit, which, for sake of render times, I'm not going to pull the whole thing, but with these, just a general idea of it, pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry, I was able to set up an entire city around, hello, welcome, around the harbor. There we go, USS Constellation. So with this, when I started walking around downtown Baltimore to get kind of creative inspiration and figure out what I wanted to focus on there, I kind of fell in love with these moorings right here, these little guys, because I realized I could do something kind of crazy cool in cinema with them, which is because in Game of Thrones, everything builds up out of whatever it originally was, and I realized that I could even take the ropes and kind of have them have their own snake life and make their way to the boat. And again, this is one of those, it's for me and as an artist in there. And it goes by super quick, but detail that you don't notice on the first pass as a viewer always pays off in the end. So how did I do that? Cinema 4D. So here's our USS Constellation. And I'm going to show you now how I built the moorings. So I came here and I took a simple cone, turn that off. So here's our basic shape of the mooring. And if you come to your object, you can adjust the top radius so we kind of get it the general shape there. And what we're going to want is I'm going to go to my display, and I want to see our lines, because there's going to be, going back to this guy. See how I love shapes, and I love the way they work together. So knowing that the wood is set in or coming out, I want to make sure that I take polygons and push or pull them appropriately. So for the sake of just a demonstration of it, I'm going to lower our segments to, I don't know, 15. Okay, so we got less segments there, and height segments, we really only need like 2. So then I'm going to make it editable, and we are going to manipulate, or I'm going to delete it. I'm going to press C and not delete it, and then we're going to come into our polygons. And I love this selection tool. I never know if it's loop or ring. I always pick one, and here I'll show you. So now it's going that way, and now it's going that way, and I can never remember which one it is. So I always click between one of the two until it works. So loop selection seems like it's going to work here. So we're going to select that, hold Shift, select another one, scrub around it. I'll just do 3 for here, but when I did all of them. And then I came to my, is it mesh, create? Yeah, smooth shift. And what this is going to do, as it moves them, it's going to create geometry which is attached to them. And I'll show you what I mean. So when I push it in, pull it out or push it in, and for the sake of this, it doesn't really matter. Notice that these little lines are added, essentially, whichever way you go. If you undo that, let's just go back to move. If you just move them, these are all essentially welded to everything else. So, I thought you were talking to me. So let's go back to our, what did I do to you? Okay. Let's go back to our smooth shift. So we put, smooth shift. So we push them in. I'm going to throw a material on them just to give some sense of the isolation between the two. So since we have those polys selected, we can just come up to select and we'll invert those. Invert. And I'll just throw another material on those, make it Pick a color. Thank you. All right, so we'll make that blue. And there we've got some good contrasting colors. And see some quick shading, right? So what I would actually do is put wood on them. But thank you for the blue. Where was I? So then what was it that I wanted to have come up and out? A rope, and a rope is what shape? It's going to be a tube kind of thing. And in Cinema 4D, we have sweep NURBs, which give incredible freedom for animating. So I'm going to come to our pen tool, and I just want to draw a spline, because the spline is going to be the shape of the rope, but it's not going to have geometry. It's just going to be points and lines. So right or side, depending on the viewport you're in. Come here, up. I'm just going to draw a rope that would go to the ship, and hit escape to set that so it's good. And then we need the shape of what the rope will be. So we're just going to grab a circle from here. And the spline's going to want to be on the bottom. And bam, it's all over the place, right? Well, that's because the circle that's driving the spline is gigantic. So we're just going to bring this down to, let's say 4. There we go. So that's our rough rope. The way to animate it, and this was the part that I really wanted to sneak in, is we just come to our growth, and you have controls over sizes at the beginning, at the end, and whether it rotates. But for this, I just come to one area, go to 0, boom, set a keyframe, and it's gone. We're going to come out a couple seconds, set it back to 100, and boom, we have a rope. So this is all relatively simple stuff-ish, if for those of you that do this for a living. But what I wanted to convey by this was that at the end of the project, there's a lot going on, and it's all hectic, but it all starts with just simple little techniques here and there, which, God, I would guess that everyone that's here, I've learned something from over the last 7 or 8 years. So I'm hoping this could help even one person. So now that that's set, we want the cone to animate upwards. So I'll just give us a pretend water. So there's our water. And I want to animate our cone. So we'll say this is when it's out of the water. We'll set a keyframe randomly there. Come back, push it down. Or you can come over to your coordinates here and push it down that way. And I'm going to set a keyframe there. And nothing happened. Why did nothing happen? Oh, because I'm in polygon mode. Let's go back to object mode. And by the way, half of this job is just solving problems, like running into a brick wall and being like, what did I do? What did I do? And even when you do stuff like 1,000,000 times, you're going to forget it. So that's part of the beauty. I don't know. I enjoy that part of it, because I'm usually doing it alone, though, in like a dark, dungy room where I'm like, oh, well, that didn't work. What did I do? Let's do this right next time. Let's do this. So if and when, for anyone that is a beginner, when you hit these moments, realize that it even happens in public, and I think it's kind of cool. So let's go back to animating this properly and not the way I mean to. So we've got our object there. I'm going to delete these keyframes down here. I don't even know what those keyframes are now. Okay, so we've got our cone. And we set our keyframe. We come to out here. We go up a bit. Set a keyframe. And we're up. Now the problem is that where's our sweep NURB? Oh, I deleted those keyframes. Okay, good. So we're over here. See the keyframe down here. I'm going to come out to the end. Take my sweep NURB. Put our growth to 100. And now, if I set a keyframe for it, coming back through the middle here, they're not attached. So what we can simply do is make the sweep NURB a child of the cone that's rising. So find a point where we want it there. Take the sweep nerve, we're just going to go down with it so it's connected. Drop this under the cone at that moment in time. Because if I drop it under it at any other moment on the timeline, it's going to think that's where you want it to start when it's married together. So now, in theory, it should work. So it draws out and moves up together. So that was the technique behind my favorite shot. So with this, this is going to be more about the camera motion and the Vibrate tag, which is a savior, especially, and I'll get back to that. So knowing that we're coming out of that original ring and the camera pans across and we're going to come down into the city, I knew I was going to trick it and fake it in After Effects and just use like a CC radial blur and set it to a fading zoom, so it kind of gets that whoa, we're coming in feel. So I didn't focus too much on vector blurs and such with this because I didn't want the render to be too crazy. So I really just all it was a very basic. Hey, and bear with it. She's pretty massive. So she comes in. I'm just gonna skip ahead here a little. And once we're in, we're seeing the stuff, some more of the iconic stuff from Baltimore. But I didn't want it to be a smooth fly-in because we're kind of coming from the sky, so I came to my camera. I'm going to make a new camera just so we could do this together. Turn that one off, get off of that one. So this guy, let's use him. Okie dokie. So we're somewhere back up here. Let me turn off more of this geometry so we can get. In theory, we should go a little. There we go. So as the camera was out here, I just wanted to go straight down in and rotate it a little bit. But I also wanted to get crazier as it comes in, as though it's hitting thicker and thicker atmosphere. So all I did after animating the camera was right-click it, Cinema 4D tags, go down to Vibrate. And I set keyframes on the Vibrate. You have controls over position, rotation, and scale, and you can set it to be random or regular, and it's pulsing. So with this one, I just want to do, and this I would suggest using this very subtly in any of your camera moves. So if you enable position, we're not going to do position for this. We're just going to do rotation, and I'm going to want it on the y-axis, or I guess the z-axis from the camera's point, right? So 0 on that one, x, y, z. Let's give it a little 2. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and shut all this off and just show you the camera. I think. We're going to go to a new one because she's just dragging. All right, so we've got a camera. And just any cube. So we're going to take the camera, come out here, way out from it, set a keyframe at 0, go into about 45, get down on that as though that's the ballpark we were looking at. Turn it up a little bit because I wanted to come into it, and at least because I want to convey that it's the front of the building where you see the sign that says "Welcome to Oriole Park." Set a keyframe, right-click on your camera, go to Cinema 4D tags. Put Vibrate on, and we're going to do what I just did again. 0, z-axis 2%. And let's see how that. Oh, I didn't set keyframes for the camera position. So we're out here, and then there we are. So now, as we're coming in, you've got that kind of wobbly, whoa, I'm falling from a whatever to go into the city. Okay, so this would be shot, I think, in reality, it's like the 5th shot. This one was, I'm getting back to the Grayscale Gorilla city coming up. I did the same thing for this that I did for the other one that I talked about earlier, where I just took the grayscale city, I kind of shifted it around until it was hugging the harbor but not in the water. And I actually ran into it took me a minute to figure out how to get it out of the water. and there is a center city position. And you know what? In case anyone's not in case anyone's not familiar with content browser, with Grayscale Gorilla's City Kit, it's right there. It's as simple as just click and bring it right in. Hello, welcome. Click and bring right in, and you end up with. Let's go and let's do that really. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. Okay, so once I had the city set around, there we go, around and underneath the land, it was just a matter of setting one keyframe at the beginning of their position underneath, going to the end of the timeline, and bringing them up to the point that I wanted them to be at. Path, harbor. Sorry, I'm looking for the texture that I use for the harbor. Okay, so in this shot, as with most of them, where are you? We're going to open you the texture for the harbor over here, and I'm just going to touch on this quickly. When I made the ground for this, something that's really cool that made it go much faster was I just searched for a what's it called when the height map topography, right? Yeah, so I looked for the topography of downtown Inner Harbor, or downtown Baltimore at Inner Harbor, and I was able to take that from Google Earth, and I brought it into a normal mapper or Photoshop. This, I think the newest one is, or it might have been the last one, but I know the newest one has a normal creator, which is pretty awesome. And if you haven't used it, I suggest it's under the 3D tab. So after I made that the normal map for this, I just literally just dropped it on and let it ride. Come on. Another thing about utilizing assets that all of these great artists create in the Game of Thrones with the whole steampunk kind of thing and all the gears everywhere are these guys, which I got straight from the content browser in Cinema 4D, and then was able to just drop them in and clone them and move them over. So I'm going to go to a new one and show you kind of how I did that and where I got those. So coming over here to the content browser, presets. Let's look at this way. Prime sculpting. I'm going to use the search because I can never remember where the gears are. And hit enter or return. Gears, there we go. So in here, I had all these at my disposal, like out of the gates. And then it was a matter of just bringing them in, and there was no rhyme or reason to where I put them. It was just what looks cool and what works. So going back to the actual... So coming in from there, after we get in, I wanted to make sure that right after we flew in, that we slowed it down and made sure we let everyone know exactly where we are, exactly what this is, exactly why you're going to even be watching this. Which is, for Orioles fans anyways, which is, hey, we're at Camden Yards. So going into this shot, I want to make sure I cut straight from there to there. And I wasn't sure how I wanted to animate the ballpark. So really simply, thank you, Cinema 4D. Really simply, once I found my, you go away, go back to Objects tab, and in the ballpark itself, again, it was kind of random. Where'd you go? Where did you go? So under my stadium, there was not a baseball stadium. Where are you? There you are. So there was not like a specific, I want this to come up or that to come up. It was just anything that was kind of hanging off of the park, and it dawned on me like seats would be good to come up, the lights would be good to come up, and it was just as easy as selecting those different aspects of the seats, for instance. Go to the end. I went to the end of where I knew they wanted them. I wanted them to be when it was finished, and set a keyframe, and then just backed up and set them down, and then click here, set a keyframe, and that's. I did that just to all these. Where is? I'm wireless, so I did that to all these pieces coming down here. And now I'm going to jump over to how Cinema 4D, or how I use it in the way that it talks to After Effects. Cinema 4D talks to After Effects in a wonderful way, and I'm sure someone else has gone through that with you guys today, and they could probably do a better job conveying it than I. However, once it is in here, there are a couple cool things that I was able to manage to copy the original Game of Thrones, which is when I slowed it down, there is this it's almost like one of those what's the little lens, the one-eye piece called? Which one? Moniker, thank you. So it almost looks like one of those, or when you're at the eye doctor and they're like 1 or 2, 1 or 2. So if you slow down the original one really, really it goes by in like 2 frames. One of those comes by, and when it does, everything gets all kinds of lens distortion on it. So I'm going to show you guys what I did to match that. It also helped me out with timing, because the camera, as it comes through it, when it cuts in the original, it jumps way further forward in time as far as its travel. So I was able to time it out to the music even more effectively. So lens steampunk right here. This is just something I grabbed. I thought I was going to be animating it because I didn't realize it was going to be going by so fast. But by the end of it, I just realized that I just needed that one piece. So I'm going to make a new comp and drop one in there. We'll just call this eyepiece. Oh, we'll call it moniker. Thank you. C-E-R-O-R? Oh, monocle. Thank you. So Command Y, we're going to make a new comp. We'll just leave that as a solid. And then we're going to bring our lens in here and bring that to the top. So now we see it. And is this lens steampunk? That's not the right one because there's not an alpha channel, but what we'll do is I'll just click around until I find it, and I'll cheat. We'll just grab this one from here, copy, go to our monocle, which is still spelled wrong, but just bear with. Select all, copy, go into here, paste it. Nope, paste it. There we go. So you can go away, and now you see we have some transparency on the lens here. Press T for transparency, and I'll bring it down a little further. Okay. So this will just throw a ramp on it to have a better idea of... Oh, no, you know what? We will go... Skycam. We'll just drop the actual one in there. Alrighty. So when this lens cuts across, I'm going to select all of them. Shift Command C. That was Shift Command V. Shift Command C. We're going to pre-compose that. Misspelled the first time. Okay, so now we've got that all put together. As we come in, I'm going to take this and blow it way up. Press S for size, bring it way up, and we're going to set just one moment for when we want it to jump. So with this, I'm also going to want an adjustment layer so we can add the lens distortion. And I think I just used bulge on this, but we'll go ahead and layer new adjustment. Nope, not a Photoshop file. Layer new adjustment. And then I'm going to take a mask and mask around. I need to shrink it down just a little. All right. So I'm going to hold Shift, so it makes a circle. Perfect circle. V, take that, move this right here. All right, so now that I've got, and then I'm going to drop this down, back it up a little bit. So we've just got that. Now I wanted to see it on there, not with the adjustment layer, so I could actually see what was going to be on the image. So I'm going to Command or Control X, and then on here I'm going to Command or Control V. But I did not paste the right. Let's undo that. Undo that. Copy you. Oh, I know why, because this is scaled up. So I'll bring it back to 100. Will this work? Yeah, nice. Okay. So now we can get rid of the mask down here. I'm sure there's a faster way to do that, but again, this is one of those like on the fly, like when I'm in my office and I'm like, oh, I want to get this done really quick, and then suddenly I can't remember anything. So I Google all the people here. So now I'm going to parent that adjustment layer. I'm going to parent the adjustment layer to the misspelled first time. So now anything we do to this, it'll do to the adjustment layer. We'll crank it up. Yep, there we go. So now our adjustment, now all we have to do is put any kind of distortion or the bulge for the sake of this on there. Crank our radius up. And because I want this to be really dramatic, if you will, I'm going to go ahead and just... So now, when we get to this moment, blow this guy back up to where we were. So anything that's going to happen there is going to get distorted underneath. And from there, I just animated in like a rocket over across and time remap below. Oh, and someone had asked me specifically, how did I get all of the fire look, and especially at the very beginning, to where it looks like the bar is actually on fire, and that is a whole bunch of Video Copilot heat plugin. Alrighty. And then the last thing I did was I married it to music. So I would like to thank everybody very, very much for hanging out with me.